What's going on, guys? It's Coach Steven with 15 Points of Tennis. And many years ago, when I first started playing, I was literally thrown in this big group clinic. There's maybe one coach for a bazillion kids, so we just spread out and all played points and sets and matches. I didn't have any skills at the time. I didn't even know how to hit topspin, so I wasn't going to play offense. But somehow I figured out how to slice, keep the ball low, so my shots just wouldn't get pummeled by the other kids. And back then, slice for me was purely a defense mechanism for survival. All right, but since then, over the years, I've learned so much more about the slice. And even though it was the first shot that I ever learned to hit, even before topspin, slice is still one of my favorite shots to play to this very day. So in this video, the goal here is to get your base slice super solid. All right, make sure you aren't shanking your slice, make sure it isn't popping up or spinning out of control, overspinning your slice or just dumping into the net. Your slice, both sides, need to be a 99% reliable shot for you. Now I'm going to do a follow-up video where we teach you how to take your base slice and modify it to give you the full arsenal of slices. At some point you've got to know how to be able to knife a slice, right? How to diffuse pace with the slice, how to carve a slice, right? How to play offense with the slice and how to play defense with the slice. So there are all types of modifications. If you're more already an advanced player, okay, you're more than welcome to skip this video and wait for the next video on the more advanced topics. All right, so before we begin, please take a couple seconds to hit that like and subscribe button and leave your comments below. It really helps the channel, so thank you guys, I really appreciate it. And one more thing, I'll leave the timestamps below because we're going to start with how to use a slice effectively. Then I'm going to do a quick segment on grips before we move into the main portion, which is on technique. And finally, I'm going to leave you with some suggestions of how to learn the slice. So, if one part doesn't apply to you, feel free to skip to the next. So timestamps are below. Let's get started. All right, well, it might seem straightforward. There's just so many benefits to the slice. Okay, first of all, being able to slice with the ball backspin and keep the ball low, it's going to force your opponent to hit up on the ball. So slicing, if your opponent is unwilling to come in and volley, slicing is amazing on defense. All right, few players have a put-away shot off a slice, and even with that, your opponent would have to be strong enough to spin the ball up and down, and even that's not the highest percentage for a put-away ball. Okay, now what also helps with keeping the ball low is taking the ball out of your opponent's strike zone. Right? If you give me a ball right here in my strike zone, I can lay into it pretty well. Right in my strike zone. You move that contact point down 6 inches, a foot and a half. Now, just my options strategically are much more limited, as well as my shot selection dwindles. It makes it that much tougher. So players you're playing against, if you notice, first of all, they're really, really tall, or some players have a western to extreme western grip. Okay, it's hard to get underneath that ball. Or players with two-handed strokes, it takes a lot of energy to get really low and to get down low and dig those balls up low in the strike zone. It's a lot of energy and footwork, right?
I'm playing a very good opponent who's much bigger and much stronger than me. If he gets the ball in the strike zone like that, he's going to crush the ball, right? Especially if I leave that ball floating above the net, he's going to hammer it home every single time. So one of my main strategies here is to keep that ball below the net, right? And he can still hit the ball pretty hard, just hopefully not hard enough where he can put it through the court, and I hopefully have a chance, right, of him taking too much risk or making an error. So every player you play against, two-handed players with one-handed backhands, tall, short, know where their strike zone is. That last one set up. Now you're going to see my opponent hit a great knifing slice. If I can't spin that ball up and down, I'm dead.
Now speaking of strike zone, your slice also expands your own strike zone, right? Especially, like I know a lot of players have, well, at least have a two-handed backhand. My strike zone is maybe, chest height, maybe shoulder height to maybe about my thighs. Well, with slice, I can hit low, high, wide, okay, much easier. And guys, even if you have a one-handed backhand, it takes a lot more energy to hit topspin out of your strike zone, whereas slice takes a lot less energy. I'd even call slice, you can even call it a low energy shot. So since we're swinging down, we have gravity on our side with the slice, and the backspin to help carry the ball deep. So it's pretty low energy. If you ever get an exchange with your opponent, and your opponent's hitting topspin and you're just slicing to diffuse pace, you're going to likely win the energy battle over time. Again, assuming they don't have a put away shot on the slice. Okay, it's a great way to just grind your opponent down. All right.
When it comes to developing shots out of your strike zone, I don't recommend intermediate or beginner players doing that, spinning it up and down hard. And it's a very much of a go for broke shot. If you don't hit it well, your opponent's going to punish you. And compare that to this very not sexy slice that's much more feasible for a beginner player that can still is effective, give you the chance at the volley. It won't win you the point instantly, but it's much easier to incorporate into your game. We also talked about the slice being a low energy shot, which is why I love it the older I get. And you see Barty at the top with a beautiful slice, and her opponent has really no option to punish it. So you're forcing your opponent to do something completely different to win. Okay, or they'll just keep doing the same thing and lose.
There we go. Again, it's that slice.
Now moving on, the next benefit of the slice is to really help you get in a good rhythm at the beginning of a match. Especially if you're feeling a little tight, a little anxious, okay, a little tense. Because slice, compared to topspin, has a little bit more flow. So to help you get your legs in rhythm and into the point, okay, slice is great at the start. I know I use it all the time, right, to help me get into a little bit better flow, help my, get into the rhythm of the point. Now, speaking of rhythm, okay, a lot of times you might have a couple great shots, but if you're hitting that same topspin or drive every single time, if your opponent is any decent, they'll start getting a read on that ball. I mean, imagine the baseball pitcher just throwing that same fastball every time. Even if it's a quality pitch, that pitch will lose its potency once it gets honed in on. All right. I always say, when it comes to in tennis, there's two ways to win. One is you playing well. The second way is you making your opponent play bad. So don't make your opponent play good. Don't make your opponent look good. Use a slice to keep them off balance, give them different looks, constantly change up that rhythm, okay?
This was maybe third point into the match, and sometimes that top spin is feeling a little bit tight. Your legs aren't, they're feeling a little stiff. So that slice, see that little bend with the knees, especially for low slices. Again, your goal, you want to get your teeth into the match before you start going for winners. Okay, I always say first few games, focus on your rhythm, your timing, right before you focus on winning, because that's what's going to set you up to play a great match. Now, in terms of changing up the rhythm, once you're into a match, see that flat ball? It's fast, but it's straight, so it's easy to see. Throw in the slider, throw in the curveball, give them something different to look at every now and then.
Alright guys, when it comes to technique, the first thing you want to check really is your grip. Alright, we'll show you some close-up shots as we go along. But ideally, when you grip the racket, you want to be holding continental. And you got to be able to basically carve the ball on both sides. So if you're hitting a return chip, forehand and backhand without changing your grip, or if you want to have the option of hitting a slice approach and coming in volleying comfortably without worrying about all this type of grip change. Now I know continental, but a lot of players actually, I've seen all sorts of finger positions where even within continental it varies. So the main thing to keep in mind is which side your grip is flatter on and which side your grip has more angle. As you can see, if I hold more of slightly more to forehand grip, even though I'm close to continental, right, it actually makes the strings a little flatter here, right? if it's flatter on this side, we call this a strong grip on the forehand. Versus, see how angled it is on this side? We call this a weaker grip on the backhand. On the contrary, okay, I can either go slightly on the other side of continental, more toward backhand grip, right? This is more of an extreme version, but I can flatten the strings out on the backhand side. Again, we call this a strong grip on the backhand. And here you see how it's angled on the forehand. We call this a weaker grip on the forehand. All right, so depending on what grip you choose, it does make an impact on your strokes, and we're going to talk about that. So whichever grip, okay, that you're stronger on, it's going to take a little less strength initially when you're first learning the slice to hit through it. That's because, you know, your hand is further behind the ball. See, my hand is further behind the ball here on a strong grip. A weaker grip, my hand is more on top. All right, so that's one benefit of a strong grip. You can kind of get behind the ball a little bit more. But you know, while a strong grip is pretty good on those low and medium slices, those high slices up here, it's harder for me to, with a strong grip, carve on the outside of the ball. A lot of times, even with a strong grip, you start breaking your wrist, and we're going to talk more about that later. Okay, I personally slice with a weaker grip. Again, more angled strings like this. All right, which means it's a little easier to carve on the outside. I get more carve in general. But notice how turned I have to get right here. You see, with a weaker grip, you can see a lot of my back. Right, I'm slicing like this a lot of the time here, whereas I'm very, very sideways. Whereas a flatter grip, I'm maybe facing the court a little bit more, or I'm more purely sideways. It also affects your strike zone. So if I'm going too fast, you can rewind a little bit. But with a stronger grip here, where the strings are flatter, and I'll show you from the side. With a stronger grip, the strike zone is more out in front here. You see, pa, 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 right? Whereas a more angled grip, I have to hit it further back, pa, 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 right? For that high ball, again, more out in front for a strong grip right here. Whereas, again, that more angled grip, that weaker grip, I'm slicing right here, okay? So it affects the contact point, and that's really good to just keep in mind as you're learning the slice. Now, it comes down to preference, whether you want to use a more angled or more angled grip on either side. My recommendation is, as as some of the younger kids slicing with a stronger grip where the strings are flatter like this, but as you get stronger and, like at this point, strength isn't really an issue for me, I can hold more on top and get a lot more carve on my slice with a more angled grip. So keep that in mind as you progress and you get better at slicing and get stronger as well.
I'll show you both extreme ends of the spectrum of grip. So this is that flatter grip, more toward a backhand, very much on the backhand side to produce that flatter slice, more out in front. Here's that more neutral grip, sliding just a little bit over, a more neutral continental. So you can get that carve on both sides pretty evenly, forehand and backhand. And lastly, here's that kind of maybe forehand eastern grip, and I slice with this weak grip to get a little extra carve on your slice. And you can apply this same spectrum to the forehand, pretty much the same thing on the other side. Now don't worry too much if you don't get this next section, you can skip ahead if you'd like. I'm just showing you the contact points for the different grips, okay? Now, with a strong grip like we're watching here, it's going to be a much flatter slice, more solid off the strings. You can see I'm hitting the ball a little bit further in front of me. Okay, compare that to these angled strings with a weaker grip. It's actually like a softer, more floating slice, a little bit more spin. Hopefully what you're going to notice here, and it's so subtle, but I'm really waiting for that ball to come in extra, I'd say 6 inches back in my strike zone. The strings are much, much more open. Where it's going to be even more apparent is the high ball. This is that strong grip again, that flat grip. Okay, the flat grip isn't good for the super high balls. Okay, we'll show you in a sec. But again, you can see how flat it comes off the strings. You can see that hand is very much so behind the ball, which does give me a lot of support and a lot of strength for balls in my strike zone. Now, going back to the weak grip, look how turned out to get my shoulders. My shoulders have to almost face the target. Sorry, my back almost has to face the target when I slice. And what you're going to see in the side view is look how far back in my strokes I'm going to have to take. I'm hitting the ball almost to the side of me.
Alright guys, when it comes to technique, it's really the kinetic chain, getting everything coiled, uncoiling, and finding your contact point, right there, okay? To get all the energy at that one point, at that single point in time. Slice shares all the universal principles as your other ground strokes. It's just applied a little bit differently. Okay, so first we're going to get loaded properly. And ideally when you get loaded, you want to get your racket behind your back shoulder. And so we're going to use a backhand slice for most of these examples. Okay, and get your left hand on the throw of the racket. See how I get everything coiled up here? A lot of times when beginner and intermediate players learn the slice, they do some kind of abbreviated take back, something like this. See this versus this? Now, an abbreviated take back might be fine if you're just bunting a ball that comes hard, or if you're just hitting a short chip or something like that. But the fact that I can get coiled here, I can get the full momentum drop, and I can get the full shoulder extension back and through the shot. So look, it's really just simply getting these three joints bent right here. Ready, shoulder, elbow, and then right here the wrist, getting that wrist cocked back. All right, this is getting loaded, and then you're going to just unwind in that sequence. Shoulder, elbow, wrist right there. Right?
Don't be fooled. Watch how I get my racket back. I'm not getting it back over my left shoulder. This abbreviated slice just won't cut it compared to, look, this is getting the full wind up. And I'm going to show you from the backside how big of a difference it makes. Now, a lot of times you'll see Rafa do this little abbreviated slice. It's fine if the ball is coming hard. Rafa sometimes, off a short little slice, will just kind of bunt the ball back and recover. So there's a time and a place for it. Okay, ideally, look, I missed that first one, but to really knife a slice, look how far back I'm getting that racket. I can really pick up a lot of racket head speed. I'm still keeping that great contact point, right? But this is more the Roger Federer. You're going to really knife that slice through the court and hit a real slice.
Now, I know it kind of might seem very simplistic, but really there are quite a few pitfalls that players run into. The first one is, well, I'll link you to the video I did on the box, but when you get loaded on the setup, at contact, and on the finish of your shot, you need to keep your elbow out of your body at all times, okay? Keeping the elbow out of your body keeps his shoulder engaged. Once his elbow collapses, you'll lose all your strength on the slice. Some people do a good job on the setup, but then when they hit, you see how I lost all my strength there? It's fine if you're hitting a drop shot. But look, from the side view, again, I don't want to be reaching for the ball or hyperextending my arm. That's also bad, right? It should feel comfortable, but this space here allows me to keep my structure strong through the slice.
I'm kind of exaggerating here, but not really, because I do see slices that kind of look like this. You can see my elbow is good when I take my racket back, but at contact, my shoulder is just dipping down a little bit. And from the backside, you can see how little stability there is. Imagine if someone ripped the ball hard at me. I have no chance of deflecting pace. The ball is just going to pop up straight. Okay? Now here are the slices with that engaged shoulder. As you can see, that shoulder is really stabilizing and pushing through the shot. And some of the young players I work with in specific literally can't keep their shoulder up. It's also a reason why the higher the slice, the more shoulder strength it takes and the harder it gets.
Okay, the next is to focus on the wrist and your wrist movement. And I've spoken about this before, but there are 3 wrist positions, okay? When you lay your wrist back, it's in a cocked position. Here is neutral, and bent forward, we call that broken. It's okay to go from cocked to neutral, but never broken. Now, you can see on the slicing side, all right? All right, now, again, when I get it loaded, I get it cocked. When it's laid back here, I can go from cocked to neutral. I don't ever want to break my wrist like this, right? That's what a lot of people think when they try to swing down at the slice. If you break your wrist and the ball pops up, well, because you lose stability with the broken wrist, you can't put much pressure. All right, when I make contact with the ball, and guys, this is huge for understanding the wrist. All right, when you make contact with the ball, if I'm slicing to the side fence over there, when I make contact, my wrist needs to be laid back at contact right here, so it's strong, right? And then I push with my wrist. Maybe I'll go to neutral right here, right? And then the shoulder finishes through. So again, shoulder first, wrist right here, and then it extends through. The biggest mistake a lot of players make on the slice, more beginners when they're first learning, if you use your wrist too early like this, if you start to fire your wrist too early, what's going to happen to your wrist? It's going to break every single time, right? You can't fire your wrist early back here or else it'll break. You need to use your wrist just a little bit at contact right here, okay? Now, we'll talk about this more in the advanced video, not in this video, but if you want to get a little bit more pop with your wrist, because there's a lot of speed in the tip and more movement in the tip, you need to learn how to move your tip of the racket. In this little preview of the next video, you need to learn how to move the tip of the racket here while keeping your wrist still. So right now I'm moving my forearm. I'm moving this muscle right here. See how the tip is moving? Right? I'm not going like this, right? There's a big difference, okay? So just a little bit right here, and then pa. That's going to help you tremendously on your slice, and that goes for both sides.
I'd rather go slow on this concept and annoy some people than go fast and have you not do it correctly. When you make contact, for any slice, you need to be in this laid back wrist position. Then it goes to neutral, never broken. Okay, again, we'll go at full speed, cocked, neutral, broken, and that applies forehand and backhand similarly. You also need to learn how to move the tip of the racket. So I'm moving the tip because my forearm is turning, but my wrist isn't breaking. Same thing on the backhand. It takes more strength on the backhand. You have to learn how to use your forearm muscle and not break your wrist. Okay, at contact, we're going to show you from the side. At contact, the wrist might move a little bit if need be to get the right angle. Then the wrist and the hand move out to the target together. I'm showing you now what happens when it looks like on the front side someone breaking their wrist. I see some bad cases of people breaking their wrist. Pretty much it pops up all the time. Look at the racket shape now, not breaking my wrist. It's actually like a little bit of a U, but I'm making that U shape with my shoulder, not my wrist. Okay. Here's again that beginner slice breaking the wrist. I'm gonna show you the bad case, like that's kind of breaking the wrist. This is what happens to a lot of people where it pops straight up in the air with uncontrollable slice spin. Okay. That's keeping the wrist firm. You have to use that forearm to turn the angle down if you're gonna slice harder to get more penetration through the court.
So moving on, we're going to talk about the shoulder to wrist relationship, okay? Because a lot of times you can hit a slice great for one scenario, and let's say you're getting a lot of spin, but then you're not getting enough drive, enough penetration on your slice. It takes the right balance. So your shoulder, guys, is the big muscle in your arm. It provides a lot of stability, right? Whereas your wrist and your elbow are the smaller joints. You can get a lot of racket head speed with your wrist and your elbow. Now, for a lot of, again, beginner to intermediate players learning to slice, they try to trying to chop at the ball. So they're using too much of your small muscles. And while it's great to get racket head speed, most beginner intermediate level slicers don't have the amount of feel and control. It takes so much feel in the tip and control to be able to time that racket head speed. That's why it overspins, it shanks, and you run into all sorts of problems. My suggestion if you're learning how to slice is to start, keep your elbow and your wrist fairly still, fairly immobile. Okay, just when you're starting and just as a drill. First, learn how to guide the ball with your shoulder. As you can see, the racket face, right, it's very stable because I'm just controlling it from this muscle right here. You gotta learn how to move your shoulder back and through, up, back, and through right here without doing this first. And just using a shoulder-based slice, and we'll show you in the demos, just using a shoulder-based slice, you should at least be able to hit the ball solid off the strings and guide the ball in. Once you're hitting the ball solid and guiding it in, then you add a little bit more elbow and wrist. See right here? Pa, pa, pa. These are my small muscles. So then the shoulder and then pa, right? But only add this after you're able to do this really strong and smooth, okay? And I can't stress this enough, but the elbow and the wrist, guys, these are micro movements. Look how little it moves, okay? Pa, pa. And even if you're an advanced slicer, you'll know you don't need a whole lot of racket head speed to hit a quality slice, okay? A lot of times with a slice, you're either using the incoming pace of the ball and diffusing pace, or that you're using the incoming velocity and turning that into backspin. So equally important as trying to, get a lot of carve on your slice and get a lot of, spin, things like that. It's equally important that you're hitting it solid, square off the strings, you're controlling it, you're hitting it with precision, okay? And so you need to find a balance between spin and flat.
First, I'm going to demo the pure shoulder slice. And as you can tell, I'm keeping my wrist and my elbow as still as possible and just learning to move that shoulder back and through. And for most beginners, this is what you have to practice, moving that shoulder back and through the shot, because you're going to want to chop at the ball with your small muscles. And this shoulder dominant slice should feel very flush and square and solid off the strings. You won't run into the problem of overspinning your slice because there's actually not a whole lot of racket head speed on this slice. It's very stable, and I'll still use it in a match here and there. Now you're looking at a slice with a lot of elbow and wrist. You can see it has a lot of knife and whip and bite to the ball. And while this is fun, I can skid a slice. Okay, I can, with that extra spin, I can hit a floating defensive slice. And we'll talk more about how you can use this in different and creative ways. This is not the most practical way to start learning a slice, or for beginners who don't have as much feel in the tip. So again, you'll have to balance, your shoulder, elbow, and wrist, and the ratio of which muscles you use. But I would suggest, again, you start off with that shoulder dominant slice.
Just some quick tips for if you guys are struggling with your slice. Even if you're doing the shoulder-based slice like this, and you're just going like this and cutting the ball, it's going into the air and over spinning, my recommendation is, okay, do good job using the shoulder, but use this forearm muscle. Again, don't break your wrist, don't fold your wrist over like this and use your forearm too early. But this forearm muscle right here, what it does is, without breaking your wrist, it just flattens the string out slightly from here to here. So you're here, string's facing the sky, which is good. Your wrist is laid back, you're coiled, and right here, it closes right here. Okay, that's going to help you hit a much more solid slice through the court with more penetration. Or if some people have the opposite problem where they're just hitting a slice like this and it looks almost like a one-handed backhand and it's just going flat into the net, all right? In that case, I would say you need to get the racket more above the ball. If you don't get the racket above the ball, you can't put spin on the ball. So if the ball is here, your racket needs to be here, right? If the ball is here, the racket at least needs to be here. If the ball is here, the racket's got to be like up. You got to get that racket up so you can start carving the ball down and getting the right amount of spin, all right? Again, finding the balance between spin and penetration and drive.
So Feliciano Lopez, one of the great slicers, you can see that forearm closing at contact. He has a little bit flatter of a slice. Now watch that forearm again, how it controls that rack angle. Okay, right there. All right, so it doesn't overspin. Federer, on the other hand, has a slice that spins more. He gets that racket very high above the ball. At the end of the day, you're still carving the ball, swinging from high to low. Okay, so that spin carries the ball deep, and we're brushing it. So it's going to take quite a few slices to really figure out, again, it depends how strong you are, the type of racket you use. On the rise slice like that last one, and you're going to see me hit another on the rise slice, the strings are going to be much flatter because the ball's on the rise. I'll get a lot more spin, whereas that last one, if it's low, I'll open the strings a little bit more. So it takes quite a few slices. You'll figure it out over time and know how much spin you want to put on each slice.
Alright guys, we went into the small muscles, shoulder, elbow, wrist, great detail, because you can't slice without getting that right first, okay? But now we're going to talk about the bigger muscles in the body, your torso, your legs. Now, a lot of the time, when you hit topspin ground strokes, you can use your body and your legs to drive up and into the ball, right? Like, they push directly into the shot. Now the mechanic is a bit different on the slice. Think about the slice as a slingshot. Okay, here's the base of the slingshot. The base doesn't move at all. All right, I'm pulling that sling, sling back and just letting it fly. Your body is essentially the base of the slingshot, and your body still needs to be very strong and sturdy because it's got to stabilize the sling, which is your arm that accelerates forward. So, funny thing, the less your body moves, the better, because your body acts as a stabilizer. You never see great slicers. On occasion this will happen, but it's probably beyond the scope of the average player. But you never see most great slicers, pulling with their body like this, like a topspin ground stroke, right? You don't rotate open like this on your slice. You stay very closed and sideways and still as possible. So if you use your body a little bit, it's just going to be like, see how subtle that is? But then it stabilizes and lets the arm swing through, and everything happens right here. Again, this is still strong and stable. Now, one of the key elements to help you keep your body still is employing what's called a counterbalance. So as I swing my hitting arm forward, this is on a backhand, your non-hitting arm should go back, okay, to counterbalance. Just like this, it should be simultaneous, right? If I didn't have a counterbalance, right, it'd throw me off balance. But because I'm going back like this, right, it keeps my body stable. Now, obviously, if you're hitting like a drop shot or a very short slice, you don't have to counterbalance very hard. So I wouldn't counterbalance like that on a drop shot. It would just be like this. But if I'm slicing hard, I'm definitely throwing that left arm back with a little bit more force, right, to keep my body still. Guys, and with that counterbalance, you're using your back muscles right here. See that little pop from your back, like pop, as your arms spread apart? That's your back muscle working right there, okay? Now, when I talk about bringing the pieces together, okay, once you have the upper body, once you have the torso and lower body stabilizing everything, okay, it's really a simple stroke. Then the next part you should really focus on is getting your flow, your feel with the tip. I did a video and I'll link you to it, where I explain flow a little bit more in depth, but flow will either make or break your slice even a lot more, because a top spin stroke, you can muscle the ball and kind of get away with it. Slice, muscling the ball won't cut it. If you have a lot of flow on your slice, you're going to be able to hit amazing shots with very little energy. It's going to exponentially improve your slice. And if you start muscling the slice, the ball's going to feel like a rock off your strings. Okay, so that's the next part you need to focus on, and what we're going to do in the next section.
So we're going to start with a good example here of my left arm going back, again keeping my body still, creating that slingshot effect. The slice, again, you really don't need that much power. The biggest thing is that we stabilize your slice. Okay, because it's not like you have topspin bringing the ball up and down. Now without that counterbalance, you can see I'm knocking myself off balance. Right, so balance is going to be so key just for all your strokes. Now the funny thing, I'll show you a few more with no counterbalance. The funny thing is, for some shots you don't really need a counterbalance. Like if you're hitting a two-handed slice, for example, or if you're trying to put as much spin on the ball as humanly possible. Without a counterbalance, you'll actually get more racket head speed. So you'll have to experiment again, like on your forehand slices. You'll probably get your left arm out as a little bit of a counterbalance, but again, not that much. You'll see Fed on his slice, right? Again, those hands separating beautifully. His body's still, and only after contact, it squares up to the court. It happens very fast. Again, still at contact for a split second, and then it faces the court, right? Don't be fooled that they're pulling their body at contact.
Alright guys, now before you hit the courts and start slicing away, my recommendation for you is, especially if you're more beginner, intermediate level learning the slice, please start with short court, okay? Lots and lots of short court, because you need time to develop the feel with the racket and control with the tip of the racket, okay? And that flow that I talk about. And without that heavy ball on your strings, that you can really focus on technique. And then slowly, as you start to move back, with the proper flow and technique, the balls aren't gonna feel so heavy when you're at the baseline. Again, that flow is a make it or break it thing. All right, your muscles will get stronger over time as you slice, but your technique. You want to be slicing with good technique. The second thing you want to be able to practice is your stop and pop. And I did a separate video on stop and pop, but you should be able to go and just stop at contact. Stop where you're strong. Stop where you're strong. Stop where you're strong. And what this does is help you focus your energy at one contact point. If you can't do a light stop and pop, and just go nice and light, okay, when you're first learning. If you can't do a light stop and pop, there's no way you can take a full swing at the ball. And I get that when you take a full swing at the ball, like slice has a very long swing plane, so you can hit it here, all the different points in the swing plane, and still kind of hit a decent slice. Again, depending what level you're at, you can kind of get away with it. But you still need to learn how to focus your power at one point. And when you're playing a match, and if you have a longer swing plane, and you hit the ball a little early here, that's just really a bonus, right? That's just a little gravy on top for bad timing, right? So this is going to help you get that contact point really solid. One of the hardest things for players when they start taking too big of a swing on a slice like this, see, I've sliced enough where if I take a big swing, I know exactly where my contact point is. Most beginner to intermediate players don't know where their contact point is yet. So used to stop and pop, and even when I'm playing matches, I stop and pop on at least 50% of my slices. All right.
So first, we're going to start with a stop and pop short court. Now, I love stop and pop. I'm huge on stop and pop. It allows you, when you stop and pop, you know exactly where the angle of the racket is. You know exactly where the ball's going. Okay, this also helps you focus your energy at contact and really helps you coordinate your muscles. Right, now you're going to see me hit some slices where I follow through. This is eventually how you're going to be slicing in a match, following through, especially if the slice is softer. But again, you got to start with the stop and pop, and then when you go to the follow through, you don't lose your contact point. So we're going to start drills with some stop and pop. Again, nice and light, nice and easy. Okay, don't stress out your counterbalancing muscles, your counter-firing muscles. You'll probably use a lot of stop and pop if the ball is coming hard with some pace. This is off a hand feed which has no pace, so you're going to have a limit to how hard you can hit the stop and pop, but it's great for developing your stroke, like I said. Now you're going to see me hit that full slice, that full follow through to get even more racket head speed. And if the slice is softer, so even that one carried on me. But if I get a ball that sits and floats, I'm definitely going to hit a full slice like you see here. Now, referencing from earlier in the video, I'm really serious about you starting, especially if you're a bit more of a beginner level, starting with a shoulder base slice like this, okay? Now, watch that shoulder base slice. Now I'm going to just add that micro movement of the elbow and the wrist. I still think Don't try to bite off more than you can chew, adding the small muscles. Start with the big muscles and add slowly over time.
So that concludes the video, guys. Thanks for sticking with it a little bit longer. Leave in the comment section below areas where you're having trouble with the slice. I'll try to hit you back, see where I could help, maybe areas where I missed in this video. Again, use the slice. It's one of my favorite shots. I hope it becomes one of your favorite shots as well, and we'll see you on the next episode.